Welcome students. I'm Dr. Sonu Shiva, Associate Professor, Department of English, Government Jungle College, Bikaner. This session is for BA Second Year English Literature, Paper First. You have in your literary terms Ballad and Idylls. So let's have a look at them. What a ballad and idyll is. Ballad is a poem that tells a story. So always remember that it is a poem that tells a story, usually in four-line stanzas called quatrains. So usually when a ballad is written, it is written in a poem with 4 lines per stanza, but it is not always like this. Usually it is in 4-line stanzas, and 4-line stanza is called quatrains. A ballad is a form is enormously diverse, and poems in this form may have any one of the hundreds of different rhyme schemes and meters. So there is no fixed meter or rhyme scheme allotted to this form of poem, and this can be written in any form, and it can choose from different types of rhyme schemes and meters, which are hundreds of types. So nearly every culture on earth produces ballads. So as you know that every culture has a story to tell, every culture has mythological things. So every culture has ballad of its own, often in the form of epic poems relating to the culture's mythology. So in my earlier presentation, I have also talked about epic, what epic is. So we know that in culture's mythology, you have epics, and usually epic poems are written, you can say, in a form of a ballad. The word ballad typically refers to relatively short lyrical poems. So this is also referred to a short musical poems produced by European poets starting around 13th century. So somewhere this term was used for short lyrical poems by European poets in 13th century also. History of ballad. Ballad are perhaps the most ancient of all literary forms. The earliest works of literature that we know are of all mythological epic poems that tell us the stories of culture that produced them. So we have all talked about that ballad are ancient of all literary forms, and they do talk about the culture and the mythology that was associated with culture. And today, a ballad is still a great way to combine two separate forms of literature, like novel or a play. So because ballad tells a story, so you can say that it is a combination of two literary forms, novel or a play. And then why novel or a play? Because it deals with characters and plot line. But at the same time, it is also a form of poetry, so because it has meter and rhyme of a poem. So it has two forms combination, novel or a play, and poem and poetry writing, because of its character and plot line. At the same time, it has meter and rhyme scheme. So this is a combination of art forms lends ample opportunity for creativity and individual expression. So if a poet wants to convey any sort of a story with characters, with some sort of a plot line, and in a meter and rhyme order, then a ballad can be created. And this has got an opportunity. This is an opportunity for individual expression. Distinguishing features of ballads. Mostly these ballads, they rely on simple and easy to understand language, because these ballads are quite famous, and they are often staged. So these are often written in a very easy to understand language or a dialect from its origin, from the place that they belong. So they often are written in the dialect from where it is written, from where it belongs to. And it can deal about the stories about hardships, tragedies, love, romance are standard ingredients of a ballad. And this is irrespective of geographical origin. So it can belong to any country, but these are the basic standard ingredients of writing a ballad. It can be about hardships, it can be about tragedy, love, romance. And one more element of ballad is that any ballad is a recurrence of certain line at regular intervals. So when a ballad is written, there are some lines in the poem which are regularly repeated in regular intervals. So this is also a form in which it's written. It can also be interrogative form with appropriate answers to every question asked. So it can be written like there's a question and then there's an answer to that question This way, in a question answer form, it can also be written. So ballads seldom offer a direct message about certain event, character, or situation. Usually, you must see that ballad do not have direct message about any event. It is left to the audience to deduce the moral of the story from the whole narration. So what is the purpose of whole of this narration? Only audience or the readers can deduce that what is the moral of that. It is not directly said or stated in a ballad. Dramatic uses of ballad. Ballads as stage performances. So you must remember that ballads were also written for stage performances. Enjoyed status of being one of the main source of entertainment in ancient times. So because they were staged, so that was the main source of entertainment. Just like in the recent times, you have internet and you have other technology based entertainment. In those times when there was no technology at that time, these stage performances of ballads, they were a main source of entertainment. So legends and historical events were narrated in the form of ballads, which could comprise song and dance. So these events, these stories, they were narrated on stage and including song and dance with it. So that's why they were source of entertainment in ancient times. But in comparison to technology-based entertainment, no doubt ballads were more emotional in their appeal. So in 18th century, the ballad-based stage entertainment came to be known as ballad opera. So this term also came into use in 18th century because it was stage-based entertainment. So there was a fashion of visiting operas in this time. Example of ballad. This poem, Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, all those students who are from CBSC background school, they are familiar with this poem, Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. This was in your course. So this is an example of ballad because in that there's a story. It's very strictly structured in terms of meter and rhyme because that has a quatrain, 4 lines per stanza, and it's a story of an old sailor who stalks people on their way into a party. The sailor describes a sea voyage he once took in which the ship was lost and everyone on board, with the exception of this one old man, perished. So this is a story of ancient mariner. It is written beautifully in fixed rhyme scheme and meter, and Samuel Taylor Coleridge is the writer, and all the CBSE students, you are familiar with the story, and those who are not, it is, you may know that this ballad is a story of this written in a very fixed meter and structured rhyme scheme. This is a nice example. So after talking about ballad, let's come to idylls. What idylls are? I have purposely put these two literary terms together so that you know the slight difference that exists between them. Idyll is a short poem of a pastoral or rural character in which something of the element of a landscape is depicted or suggested. So always remember that idyll is that form of poem which has that rural characterization, some pastoral scenes. The landscape is also from the rural background. So it is idyll, the term was used in Greco-Roman antiquity to designate a variety of brief poems on simple subjects in which the description of natural objects was introduced. So obviously because they deal with the rural part of life, so very simple things, simple objects of nature, they are discussed and described in these poems, in these idylls. The conventions of pastoral were developed by Alexandrian school of poetry. Now, this Alexandrian school of poetry is the time of, you can say, the common name which is used for that literature that came into existence in the Hellenistic times in the place called Alexandria, Egypt. So it is from that school of poetry that this term was developed, particularly by Theocritus, Bion, and Moschus in the 3rd century BC. So this is the time when this Alexandrian school of poetry came into existence in Egypt, and the idylls of Theocritus are the source of popular idea of this type of poem. So these are those ancient writers, and somewhere the origin of idylls came into existence from this time. And but you have to remember that this idyll is a short poem of pastoral and rural character. Characteristics of idyll. Which poem do you call as idyll? So these are some characteristics which I have listed. Uh, a short poem or a prose piece depicting a rural or pastoral scene, usually in idealized terms. So they give a beautiful picture, the nature of pastoral, or you can say these rural areas, not of the city life. So the depiction is all of rural life. The narrative poem treating an epic or romantic theme. So it's a narrative poem and it can also treat an epic or some romantic theme, but it has to be located somewhere in the rural areas. The scene or event of a simple and tranquil nature. So because it's related to rural areas, so obviously the scenes are going to be very simple and peaceful nature. Events or scenes are there. A carefree episode or experience, and the example is the summer idyll on the coast of France. And a romantic interlude, a composition usually instrumental of a pastoral or sentimental character. So you also find these poems, they are played like a music, and it's a composition of a very emotional or sentimental character. Thank you. I hope you are clear with what ballad and idyll is.